without further ado, I wish to welcome Mr. John Foster Pedley, who is the Dean and Director at Henley Business School, Africa. John, we welcome you. You now can share your screen for the presentation, and we look forward to learning degree, but it's rather about doing the relevant masters and MBA. So how do we align our education to skills development? So we are looking forward to engaging further with your presentation. Mr. Medley, over to you. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I'm just trying to find the right screen share to do. Welcome, everybody. Well, I just battle with the tech. I think I've got the wrong one out here. Just a second. Let me think. This should work. Skill Summit. There we are. I'm going to put it on full screen. I wonder if that's going to work. Let's hope it does. Okay. So, just give me 1 minute, folks, while I sort out my tech here. That didn't work. My initial thing didn't work there. So I'm going to find something. All right, I think we're fine. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about leaders for the next 20 years. What are the big skills we need to have? And as this is a Leadership and Skills Development Summit, I'm very privileged to be here and speaking after my friend Paula Quincy. And it's going to be a great day, I'm sure. I think events like this are really important to do, especially now during lockdown. I mean, we've all got so Zoom friendly these days, haven't we? That just being able to do conferences is easy. And it's almost funny now to do a conference speaking to people in Johannesburg from Johannesburg. I mean, you know, last week I was talking to a conference in Pakistan and then in the UK. It's just like this lockdown has made us instantly global. And I think that that's really an important point to start with. What are the big skills for leaders over the next 20 years? I've got about 15 minutes to cover that. But this sense that we're global now really matters. What do you need to think about? What do we need to think about as we develop our capability in our careers? Obviously, a lot of us focus in leadership as how am I going to get the next job? How am I going to be the leader? How am I going to become the chief executive and all that? There's some big endorsement for us and our capabilities. But the reality of being a leader is not just about position. The big thing is about being a leader is you have to solve bigger problems. And you're never going to be a leader unless you solve big problems. It's all very well elbowing our way to the top because we want to be there and playing the politics to do that. But unless you understand the context you work in, the business you're working in, and unless you can see what size the problems are around you and you can grapple with them, you can never be a really good leader. You will be at best a manager or somebody who's proposing that they're a leader, but not actually doing the job. Because the very simple thing that leaders do, they look at the context around them, they understand what it's like, they understand the challenges that are coming, they think about what they need to do with their own organization, and they think carefully about how can I scale up my organization, how can I continue to create value? And it's not just about sheer competition to beat somebody, it's very much more about solving problems that are going to help people in life. So the first skill I'm going to move on to when we're talking about leaders is going to be the idea that the leaders need to, I'm going to just see if the slide change. Can I just check with you, has the slide changed there? Devang? Has that slide changed okay? Somebody, I'm going to need to know whether that's changed. Can somebody tell me, please, or put it in the chat?
Hi, John. Certainly, it has changed.
Thank you very much. I'm just double checking. I had a problem last week. So the first thing about being a leader is, Norman Adamy of SAB used to say this a lot, is that you have to make reality your friend. And that's a hard thing to do because the reality is not necessarily your reality. There's an old saying is, we see the world as we are, not as it is. We see the world as we are, not as it is. It's really hard to see the world as it is. I mean, I'm a certain sort of person. I come from a certain sort of background. You can guess from my voice, my age, etc., where I've come from. I've been in South Africa for many, many years. South African family. There's people listening. I look at Tabang. She's a very different sort of person, come from a different background. and so is Paula, and so would be Dr. Marnuki, for example. They will see life differently from me. Now, who's right and who's wrong? Well, we can argue that forever. But if you think about this, imagine there was this brain sitting there in cyberspace where all our insights were connected to. Your insight about from your lifestyle, the way you see, the reality you see, the reality I see. And if you put those all together, they'd be a bit like dragonfly eyes. Dragonflies have 100 lenses, just separate eyes. And it looks at the world, and its brain synthesizes them. It's not looking out through one eye like we are. It's able to look at life through 100 eyes. And when you've got 100 people in a room, you can actually look at life through 100 eyes as well, as long as you can bring those eyes together. And when you get that multiple perspective on life, you can see what reality is like. And it's never what we want it to be. It's often very scary. In fact, we often push reality away because it is scary, because we don't want to look at it. But the great leaders are able to see reality as it is, manage their fear, and stay in the moment and manage it. And the best way to see reality is to synthesize it, to get many, many people's perspectives and bring them together. Great leaders are orchestrators of points of view. They get multiple points of view, and they get people to contribute, and then they make sense of that. And it's not their own sense, they make sense of it. Like if you are coming before COVID happened, you could have been saying to yourself, that's not going to happen. It's an awful situation. We're never going to have, a pandemic. We don't want that to happen. But the reality was it was going to happen. We were able to see it and lock down and change our business 2 weeks before lockdown happened, and we've thrived. And so you don't want your pilot to be on autopilot. And your brain is your pilot. Don't let that thing be on autopilot. Continually challenge and change it. This is a lifetime's work. Great leaders do that. The other thing that great leaders do is a little bit less expected as well, is that in these days, you've got to conspiracy proof your mind. And there is somebody wearing a mask. Thank goodness they're wearing a mask, even though the message is saying that she doesn't want to. But we cannot be subject to all these points of view and adjust our own opinion. Any one of us can build a perfect argument based from a very bad premise, a very bad foundation. And that's why having multiple points of view to see reality as it is allows you to build better ideas and solve problems better. You cannot just be dragged into conspiracy. Don't let your mind be polluted in that way. This is your jewel. It's your wonderful, wonderful attribute, your mind and your perception. Don't let people hijack it. Don't be taken by your fears or your identity into seeing one perspective. That is a great leaders who make reality their friends and can manage their perceptions and see life as it is, a much better place to become great leaders. Okay, might seem counterproductive to you or counterintuitive, but it's not. The next thing we have to do, great leaders have to manage ethics well. And this is a very, very useful diagram, and I'm just going to cover it quickly. There's a difference between things that are legal in law and legitimate things that we allow through social management. There are a lot of things that are legal and legitimate, having a decent job, driving within the speed limit. Something that's illegal but legitimate is often doing, fiddling your taxes. A lot of people say, let's do that, or breaking the speed limit. Or what can easily happen is the insidious movement of corruption in a company. What the KPMG auditors did was actually both illegitimate from their practices and actually illegal. They broke the laws of their practice, but they also broke the laws of their land. So they felt it was legitimate, illegal. They felt it was legitimate for the sake of their company. They could put a false audit in, and they didn't understand how that happened. Things that are legal and illegitimate might be like Google and Facebook with their tax. It's quite legal for them to set up offshore tax havens and pay absolutely zero tax on billions of dollars of revenue. And that's why the G7 last week have now implemented a corporate tax of 15%, or it's coming, at least in those 7 countries, which they'll now try and take wider. So that companies like Google and Facebook can't just take all their profits and pay no taxes, not contribute to society. So when you're a leader, we've got to be continually understanding, is this legitimate? And am I allowing illegal things because everybody around me said it's okay? Don't do that. And am I doing illegitimate things that are legal, bad practices? You can actually, it's not necessarily illegal just to be a bad manager or just to bully people. That does, if you do it too much, it becomes illegal, but it's not very legitimate. So what you have to do in our minds as great leaders, they have this matrix welded into their mind. And if you want to grow yourself as a leader over 20 years, I would really think about this. Do some study and really think about the difference between legal and legitimate, because that stuff is really dangerous. And that's where nearly all the corruption comes from. Yeah, no, it's okay, it's fine. I'm going to turn a blind eye. Everybody else is doing it. They're paying bribes. Why shouldn't I? I'll never get the business if I do it. Just don't do it, because the people who suffer are the poor. And the other areas, the things that are legal and illegitimate, quite often you overlook those as well. So when you think about ethics, there are three very simple ways to remember ethics. So the first one is what we call virtue ethics. How do I want to live my life? And this is about what sort of person do I want to be? What sort of person do you want to be as a leader? Do you want to be that person who's just made yourself rich at everyone else's expenses, at the expense of the poor, at the expense of opportunity for everybody else? Is that how you want to be? Are you comfortable with yourself like that? Or do you not want to be that? You've got a choice to make. If you don't want to be like that, then don't do that. It's going to make your life a little harder. But I assure you, in the long run, you'll get more leadership opportunities. The second one is what's the consequence of what I do? Now, those KPMG auditors who signed off those audits allowed then bad practice to happen. They allowed good quality coal to be sold overseas. They allowed poor quality coal to be delivered into Eskom. They allowed low generation of electricity, et cetera, et cetera. What they didn't understand was what happened beyond the boundary of their job and the boundary of their business. There's consequences to behavior in corporate life, both on the environment and on society. And we have to know as leaders, what impact is my behavior having on the world? If you're going to be a true leader, you have to focus on this. There's no way around it. You're never going to be a true leader. You're going to be a greedy, short-term leader. Maybe you'll get a lot of respect from a type of people, but you're not going to be a leader in a sense that I think matters. And the final thing is the deontological ethics. It's a long word, but it fundamentally means working from principles. What are my ethical principles telling me what to do? And respecting the autonomy of others. So think about these. And good leaders are continually checking their brains and balances on this. Well, a couple of other thoughts in the short time I have to talk about leadership. And here's one. How do we get to be big picture thinkers? Well, actually, it's not entirely impossible. Here's some research I did, and it shows 4 ways of doing it. The first element is, first element is you need to be detached. It's very important to have emotional control, to separate yourself back from the problem, to see the big picture, that make reality your friend bit. At the same time, you can't just look at one problem. It's like these single issue activists only worry about the one thing in the world, but there's so many things to work on. We have to think systemically. How does a big system work? How does the animal move all 4 legs at the same time and not just one leg, which we just focus on? We've got to make the whole system work, understand independent wholes. And you can learn that through systems thinking, and that can be taught by good business schools. The next one, which is almost the opposite of detachment, is you're dispassionate at the top and you're passionate at the bottom. And you have to be able to imagine and visualize. It's not just reason. Imagination is a coming together. It's a vision of seeing things that pulls a whole lot together. You need to practice. You need to practice visualization, practice seeing things differently, imagining what this could be like. And this is one of the least understood attributes of management, but the one that Einstein said was most important, and so do many other people. And all of these are no use unless you've got a really strong sense of purpose. Beyond the individual, beyond you. What is your purpose in life? What are you going to try and bring? What value is your organization going to bring to society? And those are the companies that really survive. Nobody is perfect, and none of us will get that right all the time. So I would really focus on that. And the final thing I'm going to talk about is for us as leaders and developing skills, because this is a difficult graph produced by Spool, and it says of 100 people who start matric, 60 write, maybe 37 pass. That means that 63 people who start school, don't get matric. Of those 37, 12 go to university, 6 get some sort of undergrad, and 4 get a degree within 6 years. And if you're talking about master's degrees, you maybe got 0.5 of humanity in South Africa gets that. So most of the time when we're thinking about executive education, we're thinking about this very narrow lot. But the reality is that most people are stuck in here. Most people didn't have the full opportunity. Many, many great people in our organizations are supervisors. The average age of an MBA is 41, but of our level 5 program, which you can do with a matric, the average age is 37. Which means that if you're really focusing on developing people, we have to concentrate on lifelong learning. You have to believe in these people. You have to believe that just because you're not educated doesn't mean you're not intelligent. We confuse education with intelligence. So if you're educated, you may be intelligent, but if you're not educated, it doesn't mean you're stupid. On the contrary, we have a country full of millions of intelligent people who never got the opportunity. Our job as educators is to bring skills to people in mid-career who've missed out on education, as well as getting people into it, take all that rich talent to supervisors, middle managers, junior managers who haven't got the qualifications, bring them forward again onto a qualification pathway, and in our organizations become massive skills developers, because universities aren't able to do it. Only 45% of our population have the skills for the current economy, let alone the new economy that's coming along. We have to do it as educators and as businesses. So you want a mandate? That's our mandate. Lifelong learning, fantastic learning, and do it ourselves. Thank you very much.